Isn't Dreamland currently at war with Dankmire? Are they gonna attack, or they'll just kill them if they go there? Also, was this deliberate? Make Dreamland lose a good ally so it'll be weaker as a whole? Well, Wolf, you do have a point. Let's expand.
If something happens to you, the kingdom would be without a ruler. And we don't want that, do we?
But then they could set up a socialist utopia.
Oh my, you've already become delirious.
Hi, I'm Kitty Monk. I'm here to talk to you about Disenchantment, or more specifically, the war on Dreamland theory. I get requests all the time asking what I think is going to happen come part 4. I've held off on making such videos, usually because I don't have the time to upload on a daily basis. Or I'll make a theory video, and then after the season airs, it'll likely be super outdated. There's also the fact I don't have that many major theories for Disenchantment. Maybe it's because Disenchantment isn't lore heavy, but this is a hard show for me to theorize on. I have no idea what direction the story's gonna go. Since I started making these videos, I do have one idea that's been building up for a while, in part because of you guys, the polls I put out, and just hearing about fans on Reddit and Facebook. I predict that at some point, there will be an all-out war between Dreamland and the rest of the known world. It's what I call the war on Dreamland. I know what you're gonna say. Why would there even be a war? Originally, I thought Steamland would lead the charge, but they're much more advanced. Why resort to recruiting allies when you could just bomb Dreamland and be done with it? Plus, Alva might be marrying Bean soon, so we'll have to hold off. Instead, the conflict will start with the elves. Therefore, it won't be a full-on war. At first. It'll start off small and boil over into something bigger. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's look at Dreamland's current state. In Bean falls down, Rulo and Levo go beneath the castle, and they find the Elf Iron Throne.
My hunch was right. It's
The thing.
the very thing.
Exactly.
The very, very thing.
Shut up.
Okay, twist.
You realize what this means? Dreamland is the long-lost home of the elves.
Part 3 doesn't tell us how Rulo's gonna follow up on this. He only decides to keep it a secret from everybody but him, Levo, and unwittingly Shaco. Instead, we watch Bean lose everything. Lucy gets killed, Elfo gets taken away, and Bean herself gets taken to hell. How will Part 4 address the elf twist? Well, in the overarching sense, I believe the elves will try to launch their own coup. In any other circumstance, they would advocate for diplomacy, but let's be honest, Zog hasn't treated them the best. In the time since they moved to Dreamland, they've gotten taxed a heck and back.
Zog's just been taxing the elves to the point they're starving to death, but please tell us more about your princess problems.
They fell victim to a horrible plague. They were the victims of some very public racism.
Dearly beloved and the accursed.
And despite being king, Rulo doesn't even sit in on council meetings. Of course, we know the Dreamlanders only do this because they're jerks. They're not trying to take a page from Queen Moon. Rulo doesn't know that. To him, Zog is rubbing in his face, "My ancestors stole your throne and your magic, and I own you now." This revelation would be the last straw. Why didn't they do anything up to this point? If the elves rose up in Part 2 or even Part 3, they'd be curb stomped. Now the odds are most in their favor. Bean just disappeared, Dreamland has no ruler. If he's smart about it, Rulo could just walk up to the throne and take it. But wouldn't this backfire since Oddball and the Secret Society would stop him? Well, not necessarily, I guess. When they fought with all their might in Part 1, they did a pretty good job of it. Some guerrilla tactics and careful planning, they could take the throne and install a new dynasty fairly quickly. Because of the show's formula, by episode 3, Bean will be back on the surface. Part 4's conflict could involve Bean trying to take the throne back, or dealing with an enemy in the shadows planning their next attack. Maybe she'll have to negotiate, or try to do where Dreamlanders and elves live peacefully. Part of me felt like Rulo and Bean could marry, but that seems a little weird even for a show where a 14-year-old marries an old woman. Bean would never agree to that. The elves could be what gets Steamland back into the plot, since Bean is really losing allies left and right. If Alva isn't the groom, she might have to beg for his help. But he didn't come here to listen to me babble about boring court intrigue, so let's get to the actually interesting part of the video. Fantasy shows usually have big epic battles, and we haven't seen that on Disenchantment yet. I mean, we've gotten battles, but they're often smaller scale, or they don't have huge ramifications. With the Green Smoke, it seemed like we'd get a big battle, and then it turns out to be nothing. With this, I'm talking about something on the level of Daenerys burning down King's Landing, or Frodo throwing the ring into Mount Doom. I say Rulo will ally with the other kingdoms, or at least try to, and they'll wage war on their common enemy. If you need a cartoon equivalent, think the Great Gun War from Adventure Time. Now let's be honest, despite being the main protagonist, Bean has racked up a lot of enemies in a very short amount of time. Thanks to the show's sitcom influence, at most they get mentioned in passing. Therefore, I held off on this theory until you guys brought up Swamp and Circumstance. The episode had Bean being appointed an ambassador to Dankmire, and she got drunk so the royal family called up the Alliance and declared war.
By appointing Ambassador Tiabini, you have told us everything we need to know about our alliance. It is over. This is war again.
Some people ask why they never followed up on this, and I'm guessing in universe either because Una and Derek were Dankmirians themselves, or Oddball cleaned up another mess. Out of universe, it was one of those world-building episodes, like Convention or Steven and the Stevens. Still, it was a little jarring how part 1 had Oddball send a message to Dankmire, and nothing comes of it. Perhaps the complacency is intentional. They're just waiting for the right time to strike. I mean, it took the Bozaks a whole season to attack Zog and Merkimer. Unfortunately, Dankmire, and probably the Bozaks, aren't the only major kingdoms who'd want revenge. There's Twinkletown. Slimy killed their duke. Maybe Rulo could convince them to ally and avenge him. They really need to show us more of Twinkletown, because they imply it's a much cooler Dreamland counterpart.
In my days at Twinkletown University, I was the toast of the annual follies.
This would be the perfect time. Zog is in one of their insane asylums. That means they now have a hostage. In war, they would be a force to be reckoned with. Biggest enemy would certainly be Bentwood. I am planning on making a video for them, so I won't go too in-depth, but they're so personal because they were there from the beginning. Bean ended their lineage. She killed one son and turned the other into a pig. They're a dead end. Then 2 seasons later, her coming to Bentwood led to a coup. There's an important scene that leads me to believe that if he's still in power, Lorenzo won't just laugh in Rulo's face.
Young lady, it had nothing to do with our fabulous wealth and everything to do with Dreamland's secret resources. And I will get them.
Hey, it seems silly, but if Rulo offers his allies a sliver of the magic pie, that'd be better than offering them gold. The one enemy I'm kind of on the fence about is the Ogres. I don't know if they support Bean or if they support Rulo. Maybe they try to be neutral? If Elfo's an ogre, this revelation could lead to a major identity crisis. Would he side with his people, who are gonna possibly kill Bean? Or would he defend his friends at the cost of his new family? Regardless, Elfo will almost certainly be a diplomatic party. We were focusing on the kingdom, but we're forgetting one group in particular, the common people, i.e. the people who'd be most affected.
Remember this insult when the revolution comes.
Bunty constantly says she might enjoy working for the royal family, but she isn't opposed to stabbing them in the back.
Don't worry, Mom. When the revolution comes, we'll rise up and kill you all.
Maybe she isn't the only person who'd want revenge. Time and time again, it's repeated Zog is a terrible ruler, and Dreamland is not a nice place to live. When Oddball and the Archdruidess took the throne, they were arguably worse. Bean is better in comparison, but she hasn't had much time to rule. I can see the commoners turning against them, and siding with the other kingdoms, or launching their own uprising and creating a civil war. Some people say Mockrell's a true heir. Maybe they'll try to put her on the throne instead. Things won't be as bleak as I'm making them out to be. The Trogs think she's a savior, maybe they'd rally behind her. And the mermaids will, since Bean hasn't necessarily wronged them. Una will certainly help, she said so herself.
If I do not go now, I cannot return when least expect. A powerful Una is more help to Bean in the future.
It's a great theory, right? Well, there's one downside to this. While I hope the conflict comes to pass, I don't think this will be part 4's conflict. Maybe Rulo and the elves will be overarching, but a grand epic battle royal will likely be in the last season. Wars are expensive, and the elves are bankrupt as it is. Plus, something on the scale would take an awfully long time to execute. Out of universe, it'd be super expensive too. That many characters and that many callbacks, that'd be a huge rack on the budget. There's a reason the Great Gun War's grandness and all those status quo changes comprise the final episode. Anything is possible. And if there's a war in Dreamland, who do you think would win?